Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to another episode about AWPS, the AliCAD WordPress starter theme for developers. Welcome again. So in this video I'm gonna show you how I set up the SCSS, all the style sheet area, and how I manage the entire style and what I do to make my life easier, because going into the rabbit hole of having a gigantic file with all the styles and having like 1,000 different declarations and starting to use the important declaration to override many other classes that are interfering with each other, it's like pretty easy to go there. So after many years I defined this kind of workflow and I found it pretty helpful, and it speeds up a lot my day-to-day front-end development. So let's take a look at what to do. First, before starting, of course, let's remember, if you decide to follow along or if you're coding with AWPS, always launch Gulp Watch. So in this way you won't have any problem. Every time you save a file, Gulp will auto-compile your source files and will generate your assets. So this is the website of Sabrina that I'm building, and right now I just simply activated AWPS and I included a specific particular font from Google. It's not the default Arial or Helvetica that you have when you access a website, but it's actually, if I zoom a little bit the console, it's a specific font from Google font called Laura. So I want to also show you how I dynamically imported a Google font without enqueuing the Google font through the WP enqueue style method of WordPress. First, let's access our code editor, and the first file that I want to show you is the style.scss in the main SCSS folder in the source. This file basically is just a gigantic import of all the modules and all the other folders in the entire structure of this custom CSS framework that I built. The first one, the first import that in my opinion is the most important file that you should always have in your project, is the normalize. The normalize.css is kind of like a universal style sheet that you should use every time to avoid all those shenanigans coming from a default browser. For example, like the default style that Internet Explorer or Microsoft Edge applies to your web page, like the margin and padding of the body, the margin and padding or the line height of a specific link or a specific table, or how every browser renders in a different way the form, the inputs, the buttons, and all those kind of stuff. The normalize.css, it's really important to just start from a blank page, so your style won't have any issue with the default style applied by the browser, because the normalize just clears everything, and that's perfect. If you follow the previous videos of the AWPS, you know that normalize.css is getting imported and downloaded dynamically from the package.json when we installed and we launched npm install. This normalize.css, it's installed automatically in our Node modules folder, so that's why we're importing these inside our Node modules. Doing this will automatically grab that version of normalize every time Gulp compiles our file and will inject the normalize inside our CSS at the top of everything, so before we start importing our stuff. So that's perfect, that's what we want, and in this way we don't have to load it every time we access the website, because the entire file is already packaged and minified inside our main style sheet. Then the rest of the file is pretty straightforward. We start importing all the base files, partials, components, and so on. So let's take a look at the first thing of what I did with this website. First, in order to import a Google font, usually what you do, you go to Google, you grab the URL of the Google font and you import it through the WP enqueue style in your website. But that's kind of weird. I mean, it's fine because of course Google Fonts is pretty quick, but it's kind of weird sometimes when Google is down. That happens unfortunately, or Google font is not reachable and your website cannot load the actual fonts that it needs to be rendered properly. So I decided to solve this issue by importing the file, the font file, directly inside my CSS. So if we access the partials folder and we go inside typography.scss, you will notice at the top I am using the standard import of SCSS to actually pass the URL of Google Fonts. And what this does, it's just simply importing the entire CSS of all the fonts that I want to use, in my case LoRa and Railway, and just thanks to Gulp, everything gets packaged all together inside one single assets file, super light and super minified. So I don't have to worry about doing many or too many HTTP requests to load external files, because everything gets loaded by default inside my file. If we want to change the font, for example, we want to use Open Sans as a default font, I just simply use Open plus Sans, that's perfect. And the thing that I need to do, I need to update the variables file that it's in the base folder, because if we access the base folder and we access the variables, here in this file I'm declaring all the basic variables that I'm going to use in my website. As you can see here, we have the basic variable for the grid system, how many columns, the gutter, spacing, all the type of paddings I'm going to show you in a bit, media queries, breakpoints, and so on. And then we have here typography, the declaration of the primary font that I'm using and the secondary font. So I'm not importing anymore LoRa or Railway, so I'm going to change it to use Open Sans. And then this one I'm going to simply remove Helvetica. So let's save it. Let's wait for Gulp to compile everything and reloading everything we need. Then we go inside our website and we check what happened. Now everything changed dynamically to, let's scroll down here, Open Sans. That's perfect. And if we deactivate it, we see that it's actually importing Open Sans. So that's amazing. It was really easy to switch the type of font, Google font that we want to use, just by simply updating the actual name of the Google font. And this is not creating any issue in loading extra stuff from Google Fonts, or sometimes the CDN doesn't work, or sometimes we have too many HTTP requests, it's not the best. We just, this simple import, we can import directly the fonts inside our compiled CSS file since the beginning. Another feature that I like about this framework that I developed is the ability to dynamically create colors. Every time I have a list of colors, every time I have a color palette, I can automatically generate colors for my text, background, rollover effects, links, dynamically just by declaring one single color. Let me show you what I mean. So if, for example, let's access the variables.scss, and you will notice here we have a section called colors. We have the white, black, base color, light gray, and then I'm injecting all these colors variable inside a colors array with the key and value reflecting the name of the color. That could be kind of weird, but I'm gonna show you how I use this to dynamically generate colors. And to do that, let's go inside the partials and let's access the colors.scss file. Here, what I'm doing, I'm simply doing an each loop. If you don't know what an each loop does, how to use it, and all this kind of stuff, you can follow the SAS from scratch playlist, or like series of tutorial where I explain everything that you need to know about SAS in order to use it properly and speed up your workflow and speed up your front-end development with these amazing extension of CSS, or like the next level CSS and stuff like that. But basically what I'm doing with this each loop, I'm looping inside the colors array and I'm returning the color name and the hex value, the hexadecimal value of that specific color. That if we access the variable, the X value is just the actual value of the variable, so it's the actual color value. That's perfect. Inside this loop I can declare all the classes that I need to activate that color, or like all those colors for a specific thing. So Right now I have text dash and then the color that returns the value, and the background colors returns the value. So right now I have just these three colors. So let's do a test. Let's say that I want the title to be yellow and the background color of the entire header container to be red. Let's do just some crazy experiment. So let's do it there. The first thing that I have to do is to declare the two colors variable that I'm going to use. So first of all, I'm going to call this one yellow, and yellow is going to be equal to the color yellow. And then I'm going to declare red, and red is going to be equal to F00. That should be the code of red. Now I have to inject these two variables inside my colors array. So I'm going to write simply yellow, the name of the color that I want to use for all my classes, and this name of the color is going to be equal. It's going to have a value of the same variable name, and then I'm going to have my red. It's going to be equal to the red variable. Perfect. I don't have to do anything else. Now just wait for the gulp to compile and update the standard CSS file. Now, if we access back our website, we just refresh it to activate all the changes. Look what happens when I create or add a class that I don't actually have on my SCSS. So if I write background dash red, boom. The background is red, is getting this background dash red with the red color that I specified. And if I access this h1 and I put that this one, I want to have a class equal text yellow. The text is yellow because I'm using the text class yellow. You see what I did here? Did you understand what it is? It's pretty straightforward. So I created these two colors. I added these two colors with key and value to the colors array, and automatically the script that I created, this each loop inside the colors file, it's grabbing all those colors and generating for you the text, name of the color, background, name of the color, border, name of the color, class with those values that you declare. And that's amazing. That's perfect. Inside this each array, you can do pretty much whatever you want. So you can extend this for each array by adding all your custom classes and recalling dynamically the key and the value of every colors that you have in your colors array in order to quickly create all the things that you need to use in your standard front-end development. So every time you need to create a color, update a color, assign a color to a specific container, text, content, image, border, whatever. Every time you have to do something related to colors, you don't have to create a new class for that specific element. You can just simply apply dynamically the standard modular class of the colors array with the value that you want. And that's amazing. I noticed this, I started using this method recently, and it's just so handy and so quick and so easy to use. Another similar method that I use is for spacing. So if we access again the variables, and if you start noting a specific pattern here, every time we have to update something or every time you need to change something, always go in the variables file, because the variables file has everything. So you can have full control of all the settings of pretty much the entire CSS. So here we have a thing called spacing, a section, and we have these weird arrays of paddings and margin called PT and then padding top, PR, padding right, PB, padding bottom, PL, padding left, and the same thing for margins. If we open the base and we open the spacings, what is happening here? This really complicated thing that could be kind of confusing, but it's really not. Let's read it together. What I'm doing first, like these two methods, the first one and the second one are doing exactly the same thing. One is looping through the paddings array, the other one is looping through the margins array, so no worries. What this is doing, this each is looping for all the paddings inside the paddings array, all the keys inside the paddings array. So we're gonna loop through padding top, bottom, left, and right. That's perfect. We're gonna have 4 loops. Inside these each, we're gonna have another for loop for all the spacing. And what I'm doing here, I'm looping through the amount of spacing that I declare with a for loop to increase the number of the variable I. So this for I starts from 0 and stops this loop when we reach the number of spacing. The number of spacing is declared again inside the variables, and it's here inside the grid spacing. So this number inside the spacing.scss is looping from 0 to 20. And what it does basically simply applies that number to the class, in my case PD, so this class is going to return PD-0, PD-1, PD-2, and then every time it loops, it multiplies the gutter value, that is 10 pixel, per the number of the variable I. So what this for each loop does is going to return some classes like in this way. It's going to return a class called PT0 that has an attribute of padding top 0 pixel. And then we're going to have another one, PT1, that has a padding top of 10 pixels because the gutter is 10 pixels. So 10 per 1 is 10. Then we're going to have a PT2 of padding top of 20 pixels and so on. So PT3, padding top of 30 pixel, and it's doing the same for padding top, then padding bottom, left and right. So we're going to have padding B, that stands for padding bottom, and then we're going to have padding R, stands for padding right, padding L, padding left, and so on. And it does exactly the same also for the margins. So automatically we created this sort of like scalable grid with a base unit of 10 pixels that increases and decreases, and automatically also we have 3 different for loops inside this each loop to take care of the media query. So we can also automatically scale down those values of paddings and margins when we change resolution. So let me show you how it works. Let's access back our website here, and let's simply like apply, for example, this. We have a container, and the container, that it's a container fluid, doesn't have any padding bottom. You can see that it's completely attached. Like when the container stops here, the other container, the site content starts. So the header doesn't have any margin bottom, padding bottom. I want to apply a margin bottom of 40 pixels that at a medium size goes to 20 pixel. To do it, I just simply have to type margin bottom 4, because it's 40 pixel, and there you go, automatically we have a margin bottom of 40. And then I want to say that at medium size, this has to go half, so it has to be 20 pixel. And let's simply write margin bottom dash MD, that is the same name of the media query, MD medium 2. Hit enter. Nothing happens, but if we activate the resize tool here and we put this as 100%, and we just say responsive, look what happens here. Now we're at 40 pixel, we scroll down and boom, goes up to margin bottom 20 pixel. Now the margin bottom is 20 pixel, it goes up and 40 pixel. You see the class here, margin bottom 4 is changing because we are reaching the media query of max width of 800 pixel. Also, this stuff, it's all declared inside the variables. We have the media queries here, the MD media queries is at 800 pixel. And also here we have the breakpoints array where we can define everything, and then I'm using this to generate the grid. Does it make sense? Let's make something more obvious. So for example, margin bottom by default is 60 pixel, but a medium is actually 12, so it's the double. Boom, gigantic, 60, 120, 60, see? And in this way, with this type of spacing modularity, you can control everything. You can control margin padding. Let's do the same. So let's say padding bottom, you have a padding bottom of 50 pixels, that's here. It's like super easy. But also in this case, if we want to activate the media queries at the padding bottom at medium size, it has to be 0. Let's see what happened. And we scroll down, shrink it, media query, and the padding goes to boom, 0. See? When we hit the 800 pixel mark of the media query, the new class kicks in. And that's amazing. That's perfect. So, of course, you're not bounded to use the gutter of 10 pixel or the same spacing of 10 pixel. If you don't want to use the gutter of the grid, you can declare your own unit spacing if you want to have a scalable option of 1 pixel or 20 pixel each, so it goes from 20 to 40 to 60 to 80 and so on. You can totally do a full control on this. Here you have preset spacing. If you don't need to do padding top, bottom, right, all different, you have a simple p dash number is going to apply everything, and that's it. This spacing method is really helpful for me to easily create an application that quickly scale without me every time writing a media query, every time I have a new container or a new element or a new link or a new button, I have to again another time create a new media query for all those elements. I have these sort of modular, these sort of scalable and globally applicable declarations and classes that I can quickly apply to my elements without redeclaring and creating new classes. So my CSS will be way more streamlined because I'm reusing the same classes in a modular way. And of course, at the end, probably you will have your website looking like this, having all these weird classes declaration, PB, PD, MB, MN, and whatever, and so on, But this is not an issue. I had a couple of developers telling me that this is kind of weird having all these classes that you cannot read and it's hard to maintain, but it's not. First, if you get acquainted, it's really readable because it's so obvious. PB is padding bottom, cannot be anything else, cannot be like peanut butter. It's just padding bottom, so it's fine. And plus, WordPress does this all the time. If we access like a single post type or whatever other page, you will notice that WordPress applies tons of classes to your body or applies tons of classes to your elements in order to define those elements and distinguish those elements properly. And having multiple classes apply to the same container is not bad. It's not gonna cause any issue. It's not gonna increase your load speed, or it's not gonna make your site heavy. So you can totally use even 20 different classes or 30 different classes on the same element if you need. So there's no problem at all. The last thing that I want to show you is how I set up the grid system. That it's kind of one of the most important things, having a grid system on a website. And everything, if you don't really care about the grid system, everything that you should know is that all the classes declaration are exactly identical to Bootstrap, because I think personally Bootstrap has a way better classes declaration and organization. So you have all your containers, container fluid. So if we access, for example, let's remove the responsive part. Let's go back on the home page. Here we have, let's access back the background red so we can see it better. It's awful, I know, I'm sorry for your eyes, but here we have the container declaration and the container fluid. Of course, if we remove the container fluid from the header, we're gonna have the usual container with a max width of 1440 that also in this case you can control from the variables. Here, if we scroll down, we see that we have an XL value, an XL variable of 1440. If we want to change this to 1270, that I think it was the original size of the Bootstrap 2 container, if we refresh it and we remove the container fluid again here, now the max width of the container is 1270, so you can control also these with these variables. It's really easy. So what I suggest you to do if you decide to use AWPS is check thoroughly the SCSS folder and check all the other files that I didn't show you here today. All the mixins that I'm using, there are some really helpful mixins to dynamically generate transition, and automatically is gonna fill up for you all the browser extensions for your transitions. There's a pretty sweet typography mixin and so on. So check all the files and try to get acquainted with the type of structure that I define for this framework. That it's really simple, it's really lightweight, doesn't have many configurations. Something it's also empty, for example, like the forms file, it's totally empty. I didn't define anything, and it comes also with the default declaration of the WordPress core. So we have the align center, align left, and all this kind of stuff that WordPress applies when you edit an image or when you edit content in your posts or pages and you need to reflect those edits in the front end, these are the classes that WordPress applies to those elements. So it's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can check the support me page on my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding!